So guys, we are live on Facebook or YouTube. So the people who are watching me on Facebook and YouTube, please do confirm, am I audible to you? Guys, can you confirm through the chat window? I am properly audible to you. Okay guys, thank you for joining me in today's session, learning Docker in 2 days. So today is the day one for learning the Docker. So let me start the session about the Docker here. So before going to start with the Docker, I will tell you about what are the containers and how the cloud computing has been evolved in last years. In the last few years, how the cloud computing has been evolved. So those things I'm going to discuss over here. And guys, I will take your question in the last. So what are the question you will have? You can ask me in the last. I will take the question and give you the reply. Don't worry. But first understand what are the containers, what are the Docker. And guys, if you are watching me on Facebook and YouTube, I request you please do like our Facebook page and do subscribe to our YouTube channel because such training session we having in future also. So when we will have such training session in future, you will get notified automatically. So do subscribe to our YouTube channel. The people who are watching me on YouTube. So let's start with understanding the containers. So before going to look into the containers and the Docker, first of all, let's have a look at the how the computing has been evolved. So initially, when the development is started, so the people follow the waterfall model as a development process. Then we follow the monolithic architecture for building our application, where we write the code in a single tier or as a single code base, the entire code we having at that time. Then for the deployment and packaging, we use physical server. So that time the company need to purchase a hardware and there they deploy the application over there. And if they need to prepare a bigger infrastructure, so that time we having the data center. They are you having the multiple physical server over there. Later on, the people started to follow the agile as a development process, and in the application architecture, we started to follow the anti architecture for building our application. So there you can create data access tier, the business access tier, like presentation tier, and whatever the tiers you're willing to create in your application based upon a requirement, you can create it. And for the deployment, instead of having a separate physical server for each application, we started to use the virtual machine. So with the help of virtual machine, we can isolate the various application on the same physical server and we can deploy them. So this was the thing in case of deployment and packaging. And for the application infrastructure, now you don't need so many physical server. By using a single physical server, it can be able to manage the multiple application. So this is about the application infrastructure we just follow. But if you look at in the latest, or you can say in the current application development trend, we started to follow the DevOps in the development process. And for the application architecture, nowadays we are using the microservices. So microservices are going to manage the things in better way, and there would be the isolated failure of the application component, and the microservices are easy to scale and manage. So from the perspective of business continuity, it is better. For deployment packaging, we started to use containers. So now we don't need so many virtual machine having a single physical server are having a single VM. With the help of containers, the multiple microservices can be deployed over there. And nowadays, we using the cloud. So whatever the infrastructure the companies nowadays building, they are going to deploy the entire things in the cloud. So in the cloud, it can be AWS, it can be Azure, it can be your Google Cloud, whatever the cloud you like. There you can create your infrastructure for your company. So this is the way how the computing has been evolved. So nowadays, the trending things are DevOps in the development process, and for the application architecture, people using microservices. For deployment packaging, now we are using containers. So Docker is actually containers. Similar way we have been the Kubernetes also. And for the application infrastructure, we have been the cloud. So as a cloud can be AWS, Azure, or like any other, whatever you will like. Now let's move to the next slide. So next slide is about let's what is container, because today topic is about Docker. So Docker is a container. So first understand what is container. So container is a terminology. As we having the programming languages, so when we're saying the programming languages, so we having the C sharp, Java, PHP. So these are the programming languages. Similarly, when you're saying the containers, so we having the various containers available in the market. So Docker is one of them. So first understand what is container. So container is a software that contains an application code and all its dependencies. So when we are going to publish our application, so that application code we publish, and after that we do the necessary setup to deploy it either on the Windows machine, either on the Linux VM. But in case of containers, it contains everything which is required to run a application in the production environment. So let's say if you look at in the picture, so this is the picture I have just taken from the docker.com. So here if you look at, we having the containers for Java based application, we having a container for .NET based application, we having a container for ASP.NET Core application. So we will look at, for deploying a Java based application, we need a web server. So as a web server, we are using here Tomcat, and it is a Java application code. So obviously, when you are talking about the Tomcat, so Tomcat you will run on a operating system, or you can say on the top of operating system. So here we are using Debian. So Debian is the OS we are using over here. So what are the things are required to run my Java based application? All the things we package in a single packet, that is here container. So container is a complete package which is containing our application code and all its dependencies. So what are the dependencies here? Dependencies are a Tomcat, dependencies are here base operating system image, that is Debian. Similar way, if you are willing to run here a ASP.NET Core application, so for running a ASP.NET Core application, I need the .NET Core, I need the base operating system image. So .NET Core application can be deployed to the Windows machine, it can be deployed to the Ubuntu or Linux also. So in this picture, we are using here Ubuntu. So Ubuntu we are using here as a base image, then we are using .NET Core, then we are having our application code over there. So complete this container is containing for running my application. So you don't need to set up anything extra when you are going to deploy this container, like when you are moving this container from machine 1 to machine 2. Because usually what happens when we are moving our code from environment 1 to environment 2, it can be your development environment, it can be your testing environment, it can be your production environment. So what we do the necessary configuration at each environment level, and after that you might face some issues as well. So usually we having the environment compatibility issues usually we face when we are moving our code from one environment to another environment. But in containers you will not face such issues. Even the containers enable an application to run in an isolated environment. So if you look at in the picture, it is just looking like we having the virtual machine. So virtual machine provide us a isolated environment for running our application. So the similar way the containers are offering us an isolated environment to run our various application. In upcoming slide, I will tell you the difference between virtual machine and between the containers. Because until you will not understand the difference between the VM and containers, it would be very difficult to understand the benefit of containers. Because so many people having the confusion, we already having the virtual machine, so why we are using the container? So in upcoming slide, I will show you. Don't worry. So now it's this point already explained to you. So benefit of container is when you are moving your code from one environment to another environment. So there would be the smooth migration. You don't need to worry about to set up that same thing again. But in case of normal migration, when you're using the virtual machine and you are migrating the code from development machine to the testing machine and testing machine to the let's say the UAT machine. So there you will find out the compatibility issue. But here you will not. Even it share the same operating system kernel. So ultimately, when you're talking about the OS, so kernel is here playing the main role for running our processes, for running our application at the OS level. So here, just like the virtual machine, it's not using its own kernel because in the VM level, each VM having its own guest operating system, and that guest operating system has its own kernel. So it's not there are not kernel involved here. There is only one kernel that is having at the operating system level, like the host machine level, where the Docker engine is running over there, like container engine is running over there. And containers works with all the major Linux and Windows server. So when you're talking about the deployment, so we do the deployment on Linux machine, we do the deployment on the Windows server. So everywhere the deployment can be done over here. Now let's understand here what are the various container platforms, because this is the common term here. We heard about the Docker is a container. So apart from the Docker, do we have others container platform also? Now let's have a look. What are the various container platform you can use? As we having the various programming languages for building the application, we having the various front end framework for building the application. Similarly, we having the various container platform also. So first one is here Alexi, Linux containers. Even the containers came from the Linux background. Then we having the Docker. So Docker nowadays the most popular one for building the container images. We having the Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is also the most popular one. But Kubernetes is a container management solution. Using the Kubernetes, you cannot create the images. So the Kubernetes and the Docker we use in combination. So when you're talking about creating a package like a image, we use Docker, and for managing those containers in better way, either you can use Docker Swarm, either you can use Kubernetes. So here we are comparing the Docker Swarm and the Kubernetes. Okay, but you can use the Kubernetes and the Docker images together to manage them properly. Then we having the Red Hat OpenShift. So we having the Red Hat OpenShift also, that is also a container platform, and we having the DCOS. So these are the various container platform we having already the people are using in the market. So here the most popular one are Docker and the Kubernetes. So today I'm just going to discuss about what is Docker. So first of all, before understanding the Docker, first understand why to use containers. So so containers can be used by the developer. It can be used by the administrator also. So if you are a developer, so why you should use the containers? So those points I'm just going to cover over here. So being a developer, the containers help us to quickly build ready to run packages of our application. Even the cost of deployment would be very low. It means it's a ready to deploy packages. Like whatever the code, whatever the other configuration, what are the things are required to run my code, that complete thing is the part of a package. That package is ready to run in anywhere, whether I'm using the development environment, whether I'm using the testing environment, whether I'm using the UAT environment. Even at the time of deployment, the headache would be very low because the same configuration you don't need to set up again and again. So that's it's a low cost of deployment. as compared to the virtual machine. The second one is here you can automate the testing, integration, packages also. So if you're willing to automate this process, so what you can do here, you can integrate the DevOps, and with the help of DevOps, uh, the testing, integration, and the packages can be automate. So we having the Jenkins, we having the Azure DevOps. So one of the CI/CD uh, pipeline, this style you can follow. It's up to you. So for the .NET developer, the people use Azure DevOps, and even the people use Jenkins also. It's up to you. So it reduce and eliminate the platform compatibility issues. So benefit of using the containers is it completely going to reduce and sometimes it's going to eliminate the platform compatibility issues. Usually the developer face when they do the deployment of our application and when you are migrating the things from one environment to another environment. And the next benefit is here it supports the microservices development also. So if you're willing to build the microservices, so microservices also can build with the help of containers. So so it is a very good way, I can say it's a recommended approach for deploying your microservices with the help of containers. Because for microservices we need so many uh, isolated instances. So those isolated instances either you can create virtual machine, but in case of virtual machine, the infrastructure cost would be high because for each VM need to pay the license fee as well. Let's say if you're using the Windows Server license, but in case of using the containers, you don't need to do such things. We can create easily a cluster of Kubernetes, and you can create a cluster of Docker also, and then you can manage the things in low cost as compared to the virtual machine cluster. So these are the benefits you will find out from the perspective of developer. But we having the benefit from the perspective of administrator also. If you heard about the DevOps, so the DevOps we having the mainly two teams are involved over there, the development team and the operation team. So these two teams always work together when you are going to provide a release, like when you're going to manage a application life cycle. So without the help of the development team and operation team, a complete software life cycle cannot be possible. But nowadays, when we having the DevOps, so in the DevOps, both the teams communicate to each other in better way, so that there is no communication gap it was before. So obviously, the few members would be involved from the administrator side also, which are good in networking side, which are good in taking the backup and various other activities. So from the administrator perspective, they will find out they improve the speed and frequency of releases and the reliability of deployments. So nowadays, if you will look at the frequency of releases has been increased. If you will look at the Facebook, the Twitter, any bigger organization, what they are doing nowadays, they're providing the releases frequently. Now you are getting the update for your Facebook app, your Twitter app weekly basis. Even sometimes it's after 2 days, 3 days also. So such speed can be achieved with the help of DevOps and with the help of containers. The next one is here it's going to make up the lifecycle efficient, consistent, and repeatable configuration. It means now the administrator has to configure the things at once, and that configuration can be repeated to the other environment as well. Even the configuration can be uh, used in many times with the different environments. So such thing can be easily configured in case of CI/CD pipeline when you are using with the DevOps. So these are the benefit for the administrator they will find out. So even it eliminate the environment inconsistencies between the development, testing, and the production. Because I already told you what happens when the administrator move the workload from one VM to another VM, they again need to configure same things, and there they find out the inconsistencies. But here they will not face such issue. So ultimate goal for the administrator is they it provides us the scalability on demand also, because obviously when the traffic on a website will increase, you need to scale it based upon the requirement. So on demand scaling is also supported if you are using the containers. So so the containers are for developers as well as administrator. And if you're a DevOps engineer, so it's a widely used way nowadays. So now let's proceed to the next slide. That is very important. How the containers are different from the virtual machine. Because until you will not understand how the containers are different from the virtual machine, it will be always a confusion. Why we are using containers if we already having the virtual machine for doing the same set of things. So this slide will show you the difference between these two. Now first have a look at the virtual machine picture which I have taken from the docker.com. If you will look at what are the infrastructure you are using. So let's say you are using the infrastructure in the cloud, you might be using infrastructure in your on-prem, or it can be a laptop also, because for development purpose we use the laptop, and on the laptop with the help of hypervisor like Oracle, VirtualBox, like VMware. So these are the hypervisor. We can create the multiple virtual machine. So in this picture, if you will look at, I am having three virtual machine, and each virtual machine having its own separate application. So the first virtual machine having the app 1, second virtual machine having the app 2, third virtual machine having the app 3. So these three application we are running on the same host operating system in isolated environment with the help of virtual machine. Okay. But if the same thing you are willing to run with the help of containers, so it can be run with the help of the container engine. So here as a container engine, I'm using the Docker. So what Docker is doing, Docker is not creating the separate VM, even it's not using its own operating system as the VM is using. With the help of Docker engine, we can run three containers in isolated environment. So you can see we having the container for application 1, application 2, and application 3. These containers are running on the same host operating system and is using the same operating system kernel. So you can see how the things are differentiated over here. So when you're using the virtual machine, you need a lot of resources, because at least for running a three virtual machine on your laptop as well, if you're taking the example of a laptop, let's say if a laptop having the 12 GB RAM, so I can assign to, let's say, 3 GB RAM to the VM1, 3 GB RAM to VM2, 3 GB RAM to VM3, and the 3 GB RAM I can use for my own running my base operating system. But if you're using the Docker, you don't need so much resources like uh, like 12 GB memory, then hard disk. So you don't need to worry about such things. A simple laptop which is having, let's say, 4 GB memory, or like say only 6 or 8 GB memory, is capable to run three separate containers in isolated way. Because here we are not going to here we are not going to allocate the resources upfront. Because what happens in the virtual machine, when we virtual machine we create, whether you are using Oracle VirtualBox, whether using a VMware, we define how much RAM you are willing to assign to this VM, how many virtual CPU you are willing to assign to this VM. So your hardware, your host machine should have the sufficient resources so that you can create the multiple virtual machine over there. So there is always upfront resource allocation like memory, a virtual CPU, and data storage. So these are the three upfront allocation we are doing in case of virtual machine. But in case of containers, we don't have any upfront allocation. When the containers you will run, that time what are the resources are available on the host machine level, those are going to be used. So you can say in case of containers, we having the better resource utilization as compared to the VM. In the VM, we don't have the better resource utilization. Let's say you have given the 3 GB RAM for the virtual machine and you are running a single application over there. So I'm sure you will use maximum 1 GB RAM over there. So the rest of the 2 GB RAM is wasted over there. It's not going to utilize. Similar way, if you will calculate the 3 VM, so 6 GB RAM is not going to utilize. if you are using the virtual machine. But in case of containers, we don't have any upfront allocation. So don't need to worry about like your 6 GB RAM is not going to utilize the whatever the resources you are having on your machine, on the base machine, all the resources are going to utilize. So this is the benefit of the containers we are having. Let's see the benefit in more details in the upcoming slide. So when you're talking about the virtual machine, so virtual machine is a hardware level virtualization. So with the help of VMware, with the help of Oracle VirtualBox, we are doing the hardware level virtualization. It means we are allocating the RAM, we are allocating the virtual CPU, we are allocating the storage also. But containers is a OS level virtualization. So virtual machine is fully isolated. Containers are not fully isolated, just like the virtual machine. There is a always process level isolation. If you know about the operating system, in operating system we having the process. So multiple process run on a operating system in isolated way. Similar way, when you're running the multiple containers, it means you are running the multiple process. So one of the containers, if it's not running properly, it means one process is not running properly. So only that process will be impacted. The other process on the same machine will run fine without an issue. So this is about the isolated process in case of containers, even in file system also. And if you will look at in the virtual machine we having its own kernel, because I said it's having the guest operating system, and guest operating system having its own kernel for running the things. In containers, there is no virtual machine label. It's using the host machine kernel because there is no virtual machine concept. It is going to use the host machine kernel to use it. And virtual machine obviously are slower in startup because the entire OS will start. So whatever the necessary process are required to run a VM, all the process are going to be start from scratch. But containers is very faster in terms of startup because you are going to start only one process. But in virtual machine, multiple processes are going to be start. So virtual machine startup is slower as compared to the containers. And in virtual machine, we having the many startup process because obviously the virtual machine having its own set of process which are going to be start. But in case of container, there is a single startup process, so don't need to worry about this one. In virtual machine, which I already explained to you, there is a upfront resource allocation. But in containers, there is no upfront resource allocation. One time, sorry, whatever the resources are available or the base machine level, those are going to be utilized. Simple. So these are the differences you should understand between the virtual machine and containers. I hope now the picture is clear how the virtual machine and containers are different from each other. So you can see what are the benefits we are having in terms of containers. So that's why containers is a new way for managing the infrastructure nowadays. Because here using the containers, you can save a lot in terms of infrastructure. Now you will have the better resource utilization. Now you will not face the platform compatibility issue, which usually we face for migrating the workload from one environment to another environment. So I hope that things are more clear to now between the containers and Docker. Sorry, the between the containers and virtual machine. So the containers and virtual machine you can also use together also. It doesn't mean I cannot use containers and virtual machine together. So what you can do here, whatever the virtual machine you are having, it can be in cloud, it can be somewhere. So what you can do at the VM level, you can install the Docker engine, and there you can run the multiple application. So if you will look at in the picture, I'm having the two VM. Sorry, I'm having the three VM. So in the first two VM, I'm having the Docker engine. In the last VM, I'm not having any Docker engine. So it's a complete isolated way. So here it doesn't mean you cannot use containers with virtual machine. You can use the containers with virtual machine also. So this is the picture here, which is going to explain to you how the containers and virtual machine can be used. So instead of using the multiple virtual machine for managing your application multiple instances, what you can do now, you can have a bigger virtual machine, and with that bigger VM you can install the Docker engine, and with the Docker engine the multiple containers can be run over there. So this is also be used it simply. So this is about the containers you should know about here. So guys, if you have any query regarding the containers and virtual machine, you can ask through the chat window. I'm available. Please do ask what are the query you have. So the people who are watching me on Facebook and on YouTube, even on Zoom also, please do ask your queries. I will reply you now. Then after giving the answer about the containers and virtual machine, I will proceed to the Docker. Okay, one person is asking, do we have any use case when to use containers and virtual machine together? The use case can be, let's say you are creating a, you are having your infrastructure in the cloud, and no, and you are not willing to create the cluster over there, whatever the cluster mechanism is offered by the Azure and by the Google Cloud. In that case it can be used even when you are using the Azure Kubernetes services, that is the offering from the Microsoft side for managing the Kubernetes cluster. And even when you're using the Google Kubernetes cluster also, so they are using the VMs behind the scene for managing the things for you. Ashish, when you're talking about the image and containers, it would be clear in upcoming slide, because there is a difference between the image and container. It would be clear in upcoming slide when I will teach you about the container, when I will teach you about the Docker. Don't worry, this question I will reply to you. A virtual machine is not mandatory to run a container. Containers can run directly on a host machine, but sometimes it happens you are not willing to have the machine in your on prem, you are willing to have a machine on the cloud. So in that case, behind the scene virtual machine are going to be used for running your containers over there. So in cloud you will find out the VM as a backend for running our containers. The organization should go for the containers to save the infrastructure cost, to have the better resource allocation, and even to remove the compatibility issue, so that they can provide the fast releases of your application. They can save a lot in terms of infrastructure. So from the organization perspective it is a very good. That's why nowadays organization are using the containers, because now they are saving a lot in terms of infrastructure. Now they speed up the things also because of packaging, and now they are not facing any issues in case of environment level. That's why the organization are willing to use now containers for their deployment. Okay guys, let's proceed to the next topic, that is here Docker. I hope all the question I have given to you related to the containers and virtual machine. So let me start with Docker. So when you're talking about the Docker, so Docker is a container platform. So far we discussed about the containers, we discussed about the virtual machine. Now let's understand what is Docker here. So when you're talking about Docker, so Docker is a lightweight, open and secure platform for developing, shipping and running the applications using the container technologies. So whatever we discussed in the last PPT, that was about the containers in the virtual machine. So container is a technology. So when you're talking about what are the various platform are available, so Docker is a container platform. So the Docker provide as the container solution for developers, architect, DevOps engineer, and IT people. So everyone can use the Docker for the deployment purpose and for development purpose. And the Docker run on the most of the Linux distribution. So whether you are using Linux, Ubuntu, Fedora, like any other Linux distribution, everywhere you will find out the Docker can be used over there. Even it can be used with Windows machine and it can be used with your Mac OS also because other people also use Mac for the development purpose. So if you are willing to build your container based application from the Mac machine, it can be used Mac. Even the Docker is supported by most of the cloud providers like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Everywhere you will find out the Docker based application can be deployed over there. It provides the development, testing, continuous integration, and DevOps platform support also. So let's say nowadays the DevOps in the trend because what is happening when you're saying we are going to move our infrastructure to the cloud. So without DevOps, the things cannot be automated. Without the DevOps, you cannot take the entire benefit of uh, migrating the things from one environment to another environment. So DevOps is nowadays a recommended option for deployment in cloud and managing other resources over there in better way. So for the DevOps, you can use Azure DevOps, you can use Jenkins. So being a .NET developer, the people use usually the Azure DevOps. But Azure DevOps is not only for .NET developer. Azure DevOps can be used by the Java developer. It can be used by the PHP developer. So whatever the developers are having, which type of application you are willing to deploy to the Microsoft Azure, you can use Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is a suite of tools. It's having a complete solution for creating the pipeline and automate the things over there. So such things are here can be integrated with the Docker. The same thing is here. It provides the development testing, continuous integration, and DevOps platform support. So even it can be used Jenkins also. The next one is here Docker benefits. What are the various Docker benefits over here? So what are the benefits we are having for containers? Same benefit you will find out for Docker also. So infrastructure cost saving. So you will save a lot in terms of infrastructure. Now you will have a standardization productivity. So obviously the productivity would be increased now because now you have to just focus on the development. You don't need to focus on the whatever the compatibility issues we usually face in terms of deployment. So that troubleshooting issues now you will not face. Only there is a one-time effort we are having, and after that just cool down. And what are the application we are having? They will run in isolated environment also. You don't need to worry about isolation also. The Docker also provides us the better security. You don't need to about the security. Even it make the app development life cycle efficient and consistent. So obviously whatever the process you are following, whether you are following the DevOps, whether you are following the Agile, whatever the style you are following, in that case the life cycle development of the application would be easier for you. It having the continuous deployment and testing. So CI/CD you can integrate over here, and on-demand scaling can be done. So obviously when you build the application in the production, so when the workload will increase on your application, that time you need to scale it on demand. So you can create the multiple instances, even you can increase the existing container computing capability also. So on demand scaling here can be done. Even it having the multi-cloud platform support, whether you're using AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, everywhere it can be used. Simple. So how we can start with the Docker development? Because so far we discuss about only theory, but that is also important. Until you will not understand what is container and how it is different from the virtual machine. It is very difficult to have the confidence uh, to start building our .NET based application or like Java based application with the Docker. So now all the confusion now we just sorted out so far. Now let's start how we can do the development. So for the development, we having the Docker desktop. So Docker desktop you have to install on your machine, whether you are using Mac machine, whether you're using Windows machine. So there you can install the Docker desktop to get started to build your Docker based application. So from the Mac, you can build a .NET Core application, your Java based application, your Python based application. But from the Mac, I cannot build the .NET Framework 4.x based application. For that, you need to use Windows only. So Docker Desktop is enables us to build, test, and deploy the Linux and the Windows container based application on a local machine. So you should understand here first of all when you're talking about the deployment. So for deployment, we need the web server. So as a web server, we use as a server we use Linux and we use Windows server. So the Docker having the support for the Windows server as well as Linux server. So it's up to you whether you are targeting the Windows server for the deployment. There you can use Windows container. If you're using the Linux server, there you can create the Linux container over there. And Docker Desktop is available in two different edition, Community Edition and Enterprise Edition. So Community is free to use for development, learning, and testing purpose. Docker Enterprise is here. It's a commercial version where you need to pay. And so company use the Enterprise Edition so that they have all the set of features which are required to build an enterprise ready application. So for the learning purpose and for the testing purpose in our local machine, I will use the Docker Community Edition. Even you have to also install the Docker Community Edition. Docker Community Edition can be downloaded from the Docker official website. I will show you here from there you can download. And the Docker desktop installation is available here. This is the requirement. Windows 10 should be the operating system with 64-bit, and Windows 10 Pro you can use over there using the hypervisor terminology. Even you can use the Windows 10 Home also now starting from March this year 2020. They added the support for Windows 10 Home Edition also. But before the March, there was no support for Windows 10 Home Edition. So recently they introduced the support for Windows 10 Home Edition. So 4 GB RAM at least you should have on your machine. For the Mac also, this is the requirement. So this is the Docker desktop installation requirement for the Mac machine you can have simply for the hardware and for the Mac operating system version. So let me show you first of all from where you can find out the Docker desktop. So Docker desktop can be find out from the Docker official website. Let me show you here. So docker.com. Guys, please hold on for a while. Okay, so when you're talking about from where I will find out the Docker desktop. So Docker desktop can be downloaded from docker.com. So just go to the docker.com. Here you will find out the option here for products. What are the products are available? So you can see I'm having here product for Docker desktop. So just go to the Docker desktop over here, and here you will find out for which machine you are willing to install it. So you can use here the download for Windows machine, download for Mac machine also. So here just download the stable release. You can download the age release also, that is a the preview of the upcoming version, what the new feature they are adding. So you can download a stable release from here. So I'm using here Windows machine. So on the Windows machine, when you will download, after downloading you will find out your Docker icon. So I'm just opening here my Docker desktop. So when you will start the Docker desktop on your machine, in the taskbar you will find out the icon over here. Docker is starting. So you can see it is showing me the icon here. The Docker is starting simply over here. So when it will start, then I can open it here by clicking over there. Similar icon you will get on your Mac machine also when you are going to start with your Mac machine over there. And here if you are a .NET developer, so being a .NET developer, I will suggest you here, please download the Visual Studio 2019. So Visual Studio 2019 can be downloaded from the Visual Studio official website. Why I'm suggesting to use Visual Studio 2019? Because in Visual Studio 2019 we having a container explorer which is not available in Visual Studio 2017 by default. So with that for container explorer, you can manage the container, like you can restart, you can look at the images also over there. So just download the Visual Studio 2019. So you can download the community edition over there, because community edition is also free for learning purpose. So we are just using here for learning purpose. So just go ahead with the community edition. So I'm already having the Visual Studio 2019. I'm having here Docker desktop also. Today what I will do here, I will use the Visual Studio Code actually, because I prefer the VS Code when I'm going to write the multi-build pipeline for my Docker image. So you should download the VS Code ID also. So for Windows, Mac and the Linux, you can go ahead the VS Code. So make sure you are having the Visual Studio as well as VS Code IDE. So Visual Studio is fine when you're using the .NET 4.x base application. VS Code is good when you're building the Angular base application, your .NET Core base application and any other application. So these are the tools you should have on your machine for the IDE. And if you're willing to access the database also, so for the database, make sure you have installed the SQL Server. So just download a SQL Server Management Studio. Even the SQL Server I can run inside my Docker container also, because the SQL Server you don't need to run on your machine over there. So there is a SQL Server Docker image which I can download from the Docker Hub, and I can run my SQL Server over there. So just like we having the NuGet.org, similar way we having the Docker Hub over here. If you will look at, we having the Docker Hub. So in Docker Hub, you will find out what are the most popular images are available across the world. It is just like similar to the NuGet.org, where we find out all the .NET packages which we can use in our application. And it is just like we having the npmjs.com, where we having the Angular packages are like all the .NET based packages. So similarly, we having the Docker Hub. So in the Docker Hub, you need to create your account even when you will try to download the Docker desktop. So that time it will ask from you, first create the account on the Docker Hub. So I already created my account on the Docker Hub. Using that account, I logged in over there. After that, you can download the Docker desktop, install it, and start using in a local machine. So here you can search for any image. Let's say I'm willing to search here for a .NET Core image. If you will look at, we having a .NET Core image published by the Microsoft. We having a .NET Core runtime image also published by Microsoft. We having the .NET Core SDK image. So what other things are available from Microsoft we can find out over here. If I will click, it will open the page from where I will find out the way how I can download this image into my local machine. So if you will find out over here, it's having the .NET Core 2.1 and 3.1 image. You can see you can download the .NET Core SDK, ASP.NET Core Runtime, .NET Core Runtime, and other dependencies. Even if you will find out, we having here .NET 5.0 plus image also, because .NET 5 is also on the way. So .NET 5 preview image you can download from here. Even if you are willing to find out like SQL Server image, if I'm willing to run the SQL server inside a container. So here you can find out the image for SQL server also. I can make a search for SQL server. Even for MySQL, Node.js, Java, PHP, all the images you will find out. So you can see this is my SQL server image. So to download this image locally, this command you need to run here, docker pull command you need to run. Then define the Microsoft Container Registry. If you will look at it, say MCR. So MCR is here standing for Microsoft Container Registry. Similar way, you will have the Azure Container Registry. Azure Container Registry also available. So this is the command to run here for downloading the Microsoft SQL Server image locally. Even they just shown the way what the various images are available. So image is available for SQL Server 2017, SQL Server 2019. Because starting from SQL Server 2017, now the Docker, now the SQL Server can run on the Linux machine also. Before the SQL Server 2017, it's not supported on Linux. You have to use only Windows Server. But now you can use Linux as well. So they shown the way how the image can be used. So this is a command over here, docker run. Then define the environment specific thing like accept the enterprise user label agreement. Define the password for your assay user. Then the port number for running the SQL Server. So SQL Server always run on the port number 1433. Then define the image name over here. So this is the way that the SQL Server image can run as a container on your local machine. And it's up to you whether you're using 17 or 19. Okay, so this is the way from where you can explore all the available images as we explore the npmjs.com for all the available node.js packages, as we explore the nuget.org for all the available .NET packages. So before this one, let's understand what will happen when you will install the Docker desktop. So when you will install the Docker desktop, so Docker desktop installation is include all the necessary things which are required for building our application with the help of Docker. So it will have the Docker engine, Docker CLI client. So nowadays we use CLI. If you are using the Angular, so we having over there Angular CLI. If you are using the .NET Core, we having the .NET Core CLI also. Similar way we having the .NET CLI, which help us to query the Docker daemon, Docker engine over there. So Docker engine, like you can say that the Docker daemon we can query with the help of Docker CLI client. You will have the Docker Compose support also. So whenever there is a requirement to create a cluster for Docker containers, so there we can use Docker Compose. So Docker Compose will help us to run multiple containers in a cluster. We having the Docker machine, so Docker machine will also be created over there. You will have the kitematic in the older version of Docker desktop, but in the latest version of Docker desktop, you don't need to have kitematic. Using the dashboard, it can be done. And even it will have the containers and images created with Docker desktop. So one more thing you should understand over here when actually you will install the Docker desktop in your local machine. So that Docker desktop is shared between all the users account on your machine. Let's say you are having a shared machine, that shared machine having the multiple user account. So what the Docker desktop you will install, it will be shared among the multiple user accounts on that machine. Don't think it is a user specific. It is a machine specific. So let's see. I just explained from where you can download the Docker desktop. And one more thing you should enable over here. Actually, when you will try to install the Docker desktop, it need the Hyper-V enable on your machine. If the Hyper-V is not enabled in your machine, it will not able to install it. So what you can do here, you can go to the control panel. From the control panel, you can set up how to enable the Hyper-V to install the Docker desktop on your Windows machine. So I'm using here Windows machine, and in the Windows machine, I'm just showing you how the Docker desktop can be like how the Hyper-V can be enabled. So just go to the program and features option over there. And the programs and features section, if you will look at, I'm having the option here, turn Windows features on and off. So let's go to the Windows feature and on off. So make sure you are having the option here for Hyper-V. So this is a Hyper-V. So you can see in my case Hyper-V is enabled. So if you will have the Windows 10 Pro and if you are having the latest hardware, you will have the Hyper-V support on your Windows machine. So when you will try to install the Docker desktop, it will try to enable this Hyper-V option also. So I will suggest you here, please enable the Hyper-V option before installing the Docker over there. But if you don't have, let's say, Hyper-V enabled, if you don't have, let's say, a Windows 10 Pro machine, so how you can set up it here? Here you can go through the Docker official documentation, how to set up the Docker for Windows 10 Home Edition. So Windows Docker for Windows 10 Home. So recently they added the things here for Windows 10 Home Edition also. So this is the things over here. So now the Docker can be installed on the Windows 10 Home machine also using the WSL2 backend. So WSL2 support you need to enable on your Windows 10 machine if you are willing to install the Docker desktop. So you can refer this documentation. What is the this Docker desktop WSL2 backend? Just refer it. They just shown us the step also. Like, make sure you are having the Windows 10 version 2004 and higher, and just follow the instruction over here to enable the WSL2 features if you are trying to use in on Windows 10 Home Edition. But if you're having the Windows 10 Pro, you don't need to enable such things over there. Just directly start installing. But this is the specific I'm telling to the people who are having the Windows 10 Home Edition, because I know various people is still having the Windows 10 Home Edition. So this is the URL which you can refer to set up your machine for your Windows 10 Home Edition. The link I'm sharing in the chat window. Please have the link over there and start using it. How to set up it on the Windows 10 Home Edition. Link I shared in the chat window. From there, you can refer the information. Yes, SQL you can also install on the Mac. So SQL Server can be installed on the Mac with the help of Docker containers. It's possible. So the configuration detail I explained to you, because until you will not configure the Docker desktop, so will not experience that element things over here. So let me show you here how we can now use the Docker CLI. So just open the command prompt, whatever the command prompt you are having. And after the successful installation of Docker, you will find out the Docker CLI. So Docker CLI you can find out over here by using the Docker command. So I'm using here Docker space dash dash version. I just mentioned here to check which version of Docker I'm having. So you can see I'm having a Docker version 19.0.38. Even the same information you can find out by looking at this Docker icon. So this Docker icon I'm having here. So let me do right click. Then you will find out over here settings. Now first look at what are the things you will get when you will actually having your Docker desktop on your local machine. So you can see this is the settings over here, and if you will look at this is my Docker dashboard where I'm already having the containers right now not running. They are just stop. So from here directly you can delete the containers. You can start them also. So I'm not showing here to delete them. Let's say I can delete few of the containers which I'm not using. Actually, I'm using the containers already with Kubernetes. So it is showing me that setup for Kubernetes also. Okay. So if you will look at this is the settings over here. So if you will look at in the settings, so one more thing you should understand over here, Docker actually we use for building the container images to target the Windows server and to target the Linux server. So how I will get to know whether it's targeting the Linux server, whether it's targeting the Windows server. So when you will click on the icon, do left click, then you will get the option here switch to Windows container. So right now what is happening, my Docker desktop is running to support the Linux container. So whatever the application I will build, those application I can package for Linux server. So I usually use .NET Core with the Linux container because Linux is the widely and the adopted way across the world for doing the deployment with the help of containers. But from here you can switch to the Windows container. When I will click on this icon, what it will do, it will switch the setting of my Docker desktop from Linux to Windows. So Windows container you might be required when you are having the .NET Framework 4.x based application. So let's say you are having the MVC5, you having the ASP.NET Web Form. So such application, let's say you are willing to run with the help of the Docker. So in that case, you need the Windows container because the .NET Framework 4.x we cannot run on the top of Linux machine. But for the .NET Core, Angular, Node.js, Java, Python, you can use Linux. So that's why I'm using here Linux. I'm not using here Windows container over here. Then here you will find out the setting for your Docker resources. Now how many resources I just allocated to this my Docker desktop. You can see I just assigned to two CPU here. It can use here maximum 2 GB RAM. This is the disk image size it's using over it, 10.5 GB size it's using. And this is the data where the Docker image location is over there. So these setting you can look at and you can find out simply over there. So the Kubernetes single cluster can be enabled over there in my local machine. What I have done, I have also enabled the Kubernetes cluster because when you're talking about the enterprise ready application development, there we use Kubernetes. So Kubernetes single node cluster I can run with the help of Docker desktop. That's why I just enable it. But today we are not discussing the Kubernetes, we are discussing the Docker over here. So this way how we can find out whether it's running for Linux container, whether it's running for Windows container over there. That's great. So now here by using the Docker CLI, I can find out what are the various images I'm having, what are the various running containers are having. So I can run here the command docker image ls. So ls here for listing purpose, I'm just going to list all the images which I'm having on my local machine. So let me make the font size small. So if you look at these are the various images I'm already having on my local machine. So I'm having an image for authentication service. V1 is the tag name here. This is the image ID. It is going to create it 3 days ago. So these are the few images I just created here for building my microservices based application. So these images are created here. So when I take the training on microservices and Kubernetes, so that time we practice how we can build the microservices with the help of Docker and the Kubernetes. So these are the training session images I am showing over here. And if you look at we having the images for our .NET Core also. If you look at I'm having the images for .NET Core also. So you can see I'm having here a .NET Core 3.1 image. I'm having here ASP.NET Core 3.1 image also. And from where we downloaded the images. So images we downloaded from the Docker desktop, which I explained to you. So here the Docker desktop images has been downloaded. Even I will show you here I'm having the image for SQL Server also. So if you will look at I'm having the image for Microsoft SQL Server also. So which I downloaded 2 months back. So when we do the practice by building the microservices using .NET Core and SQL Server as a container, so that time I explain in my training program how we can use SQL Server 2019 as a container. So this is the image is available over there. Even we having the images for Kubernetes cluster also. So these are the K8s images. These are for Kubernetes, which we are having over here simply. So your machine will have all the images locally when you will try to run the container. So in your case, it would be empty. You will not get any image over there. So what you will do when you will try to I use the image first time, that time it will download the image from the Docker Hub and will start using over here simply. So let me show you here how a simple Docker based application I can build with the help of Visual Studio Code and the .NET Core over there. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to create here a .NET Core based application with the help of my Docker. Before that, let me show you here what are the settings actually you should understand before getting started with the .NET Core along with the Docker over there. I'm just going to explain each and every small point so that you get to know, so that there is no confusion. So let's start with uh, the Docker fundamentals so that you get to know what other things are available over here. So I already explained to you whether you are a .NET Core developer, Java developer, or like JavaScript developer. So you are having the two option over here for deploying your application. Either you can use Windows Server, either you can use Linux, because these application can be deployed in the both environment. So I'm just going to use a Linux, even the same setting I just shown to you, how you can check whether it's for Linux, whether it's for Windows over there. But if you are a .NET 4.x or like .NET 3.5 developer, so in that case, you are having only one option. You can use over there only Windows Server Core. You cannot use over there Linux, even it is not possible. So these are the settings we are having for legacy application. Legacy means .NET Framework 4.x and .NET Framework 3.5 based application. But .NET Core I can use Linux and Windows. So I prefer here Linux. Even the people prefer the Linux when they are going to build the containers over there. Docker community and enterprise I'm not going to explain to you over here. Okay. So now here before getting started with Docker, you should understand here first of all the Docker basics. How the Docker basics we are having. So in the Docker basic we are having Docker file, Docker image, Docker container, Docker registry. So these are the things you should know over there. So when you are actually building your Docker image, first of all we need to add over there Docker file. Let me show you here how the Docker file you need to add over there. Then after that you can create your Docker image. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to use here the VS Code. So I'm already having a code folder in my C drive. So using the .NET CLI, I'm just going to create a .NET Core application. So .NET new, I'm just creating here a simple console application in my case. And then I'm defining my application name. Let's say the project name. So project name is, let's say, my console app. So this would be my project name for my .NET Core application. I'm going to start. So what it did for us, it's created here a new application with the name my console app. Now it is restoring all the NuGet packages. So what I can do here, this my console app I can open from my C drive. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to open my C drive there. So you can see this is my C drive, I'm in the code. This is my console app. This console app I can open using my VS Code IDE. So I just open here my VS Code IDE, and this is my program.cs file. It's a complete, it's a very basic console application. If you want to test it, you can test it here using the .NET CLI. .NET run is a command I can run to run my code. So you can see I'm getting here hello world. Hello world I'm getting here as an output for running my console application. So here for running this application with the help of Docker, First of all, I need to add here the Docker support. So Docker support can be added here by adding the Docker file. So you are having here two options, that add the Docker file manually by doing right click, add a Docker file. But if you have enabled the Docker extension support in the VS Code, so what I can do, I can directly use the Control P, and then I can go to here the option add a Docker file support to my project. So I'm just using here the VS Code option for adding the Docker file support. So which type of application it is having? It's having here a .NET Core console application. If you are having the ASP.NET Core, Node.js, Python, Java, C++, Go, and Ruby, so one of the option you can use. So I'm just using here .NET Core console application support. I'm just going to add over there. So okay, it is saying here just generate the build task for using this extension. So the thing is, let me use here .NET build command. Let me open it again, because until it will not have the build task in my VS Code, it will not automatically generate the code for me. Okay, that's fine. Okay, Control Shift P, .NET Core console. Yes. So build task has been added now. So now it will work fine. So last time it was not created because there was no support for build tasks. We need to add it when we are using this extension. Now it's showing me whether I'm willing to create the container for Linux or Windows machine. So I'm going to create a container for my Linux machine. So include optional Docker compose file. No, I'm not willing to add the Docker compose file. I'm just using a no. So what it will do, it's just did the setting for me automatically. It's added here a Docker file. So this file I have not created manually over here because I don't have so much time in this session. I already taking the session for more than 1 hour. I directly created it from the extension I installed. So if you look at here, I'm having here .NET Core Runtime 3.1, having the working directory over here. Then what we are doing here, it's a multi-stage build file. So this is the stage 1, this is the stage 2, this is the stage 3, this is the stage 4. So this file is going to be created in the different stages. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. So here the stage start from the from statement. So this is a from statement to start the stage. So what we are doing in the first stage, we are downloading here the .NET Core runtime image. In the second image, what we are doing, we are just first restoring all the .NET packages which are required to build my code. After that, I'm building my application using the .NET CLI. It's a .NET CLI command to build your .NET console project. In the third stage, we are publishing our code. So obviously, before doing the deployment, we publish our code. And this is the folder where I'm publishing the code. And this is the folder where I'm putting my build code. So when the code will publish in this folder, so this publish folder code I will use in my working directory. So working directory is a directory created in the base operating system image from where my application will run. Now we have being an entry point. This entry point will initiate the .NET CLI, and it's having the my console app.dll. So using this, I can start executing my console application DLL. If you want to check it here, what I can do by using here directly, I can start running my application simply. So this is the way. This is a sample file which I created. So just First of all, you need to build the command. So this is the command over here which you can use to build your application. .NET build, then there's T, then define the your image name, then directory, then run the command like this way. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to build my Docker image in my, so it would be, let's say, Docker build command, define here tag name, console app colon v1, then define the current working directory. Dot is here for defining the current working directory. Let's say I'm using v2. So what it will do, it will create here a Docker image from this Docker file. So it is just running all the things over here in the backend. So whatever the steps we written in this Docker file, it is going to execute for us for running over here. So it's the build has been succeeded in my case. If you will look at now, it is trying to publish. So this is the publish code. It is trying to run over here. If you will look at it, successfully tagged my Docker image with the name console app colon v2. So this is the image now available. If you want to check it, this image is available now. So Docker image ls. When you will use this command, you will find out we having the console app v2 image. You can see I'm having an image console app v2 that is created 19 seconds ago. Now this console image I can use to run my Docker image. So I can use a Docker run command. Already command I just mentioned the ppt for your uh, easy. So just define a Docker run, then define the container name, then image name. So what I'm doing here, just defining here Docker run, then container name. Let's say my container. Then what image you are having. So my image name is, let's say, console colon v2 is my image name. Okay, it's not able to find out the console image. Okay, the image name is console app, not the console. It is a console app image. I just mentioned the wrong name. So you can see when I run my container, so I'm getting the output here as hello world, which is actually the code written in my console application. So this is the way a simple container we just run through this Docker CLI. So, so Docker CLI first I used to build the image, then I used to run the container. So guys, for today's session I have done from my side. So I hope you like this session. What is the container? What is the Docker? And how we can use Docker for building our .NET Core image and to run it. So join me in the next session to learn about the Docker basics. What is the Docker image? What is the Docker containers? What is the Docker CLI? And how we can deploy our ASP.NET Core application. So such thing I will cover in next session. So join me in the for the next session if you are willing to have the information about when we will have the next session. You can just do refer to .NET tricks. So what you can do here, you can go to the event section, and in the event section you can get the information about when we have the next session of the Docker. So just do register for the next session for the Docker. This is a link I'm sharing with you. We already having more than 500 registration for the same event. So next event we will have on the 15th June. The day would be Monday, time would be same 7:30. Even I'm just going to announce here one more event. Now the next session we are going to have on the microservices. If you're willing to learn how to build the microservices using the .NET Core, so do follow the .NETix event page. There I will announce the microservices event also, where I will teach you how you can build the microservices. So guys, thank you for joining this session. If you have any query, any doubt, you can ask to me in the chat window. I will reply. Nitin, you can build the Linux and Windows container by using the same machine. So in my case, by using the same Docker desktop, I can build the Linux based image, and I can create the Windows based image also. But at a time, you have to run only one. Either use Linux, either use Windows. Together, you cannot use the things. And you guys, if you like the today's session, please share this session information with your colleagues, with your friends also, so that they also get the benefit from the .NETix free session. So please share with your friends also whatever we covered in today's session. And this session recording will be available on the Facebook and the YouTube .NETix channel. So do subscribe to .NETix YouTube channel to get the training about latest technologies, because in upcoming week we already plan the training on microservices, DevOps, Kubernetes, various latest and the cutting edge technologies training I will give you through my .NETix YouTube channel. So please do subscribe to .NETix YouTube channel and like us on Facebook page also. And that session information you will get always on the .NETix official website to get the things. Yasharize is asking the OS is also included in the container. Yeah, OS always would be the part of the image. This is the base image actually to run my application code. If you will not have the base operating system image, it will not run it simply. Okay, some people are asking my name. My name is Shailen Johan. Thank you, Ma, for joining this session. I really appreciate your feedback. Okay, the people are joining us from Chile also. Okay, that's great. Michael. Okay, guys, I hope I have given the answer of your queries. Don't forget to join me next session. The next session would be the hands-on session of .NET Core and Docker. Thank you. Bye-bye.